All right, moving on. Let's talk about if you cannot cry or if you're not crying. You might be unable to cry. You might be listening to this and be, saying like, oh, cool, that's awesome. I can't cry. I don't cry. It doesn't come out. So a lot of my clients will say that they don't cry in front of others or they cannot cry in front of others. And I believe them. And I see that, in session that they might have an impulse to cry, but it doesn't come up or it doesn't come out. The impulse is there, but it's not acted upon. And, I think it's pretty common that we feel embarrassment or vulnerability and when we cry in front of others. And when we've cried in the past in front of others, we may have gotten negative reactions. We may have gotten humiliation, ridicule. And so, you're not, that could have been its own little trauma in and of itself. And so you're not going to want to, cry in front of somebody else because of that past event or events. But also, as you come up the polyvagal ladder into your safety state, as you get more self-regulated and grounded in your safety state, it might feel really uncomfortable. And so you have to deal with, or you have to be able to tolerate that discomfort of being in your safety state and being in front of somebody else. And that can be really a big challenge. And so your ability to cry in front of somebody else, even a therapist, might be less. Your ability to cry in front of somebody else, like a spouse or a loved one or a friend, might be less because it's uncomfortable, it's difficult, its vulnerability is a challenge. And that's okay. Or maybe you're someone who cries a ton and it doesn't really get you anywhere. I've met with those people as well. Maybe you cannot stop crying, or when you cry, it turns into something else. It turns into panic or destruction. Maybe it's completely overwhelming. What I'm talking about here, where it's uncomfortable to cry in front of somebody, or it's uncomfortable to feel these feelings, that's different than this next part, which is dysregulated freeze attempts. So where the body is attempting to discharge its stuck freeze energy, but it's dysregulated. The first one is there's more regulation in there. It's really uncomfortable and vulnerable. With this one, this path of releasing or attempting to release, there's dysregulation. There's not enough safety in the system to even notice that it's uncomfortable, or to even notice maybe that there's an impulse to cry and be vulnerable, if there is at all. In this, the freeze state is being triggered. So when the safety state's active, that results in crying. This can be felt, this can be experienced, this can be discharged successfully. Maybe not all at once, but gradually, and maybe at once, but over time, gradually, there might be a successful discharge. But dysregulated freeze might result in some crying, maybe, but it would be this uncontrollable, unproductive cry. It would feel overwhelming. Dysregulated freeze discharging or attempting to discharge also can look like rage or panic. So that dysregulation means there's not enough safety in the system active in order to be able to tolerate. The vagal brake is not active. It's not strong enough. And so if that's the case, then the defensive state is too much. There's too much flight fight in the system. There's too much freeze going on and not enough safety. So if there's too much of that, there's too much fight and immobilization, and it gets triggered, that could result in this explosive rage. Remember what I said before, which is that tensing and then releasing impulse. So maybe that could be having this rage inside of you at all times. Maybe it just kind of lingers. It's always there because you're stuck in this angry fight freeze state, immobilized fight state. But when it gets triggered, then it explodes into a rage. And it makes me wonder about people who are abusive and why around someone they feel or they think or the body detects as being weaker than them, that the rage comes up. Could that be some faulty neuroception about not safety, but a lack of danger or a perceived lack of danger? I wonder. Panic is also a freeze, but it's more of the flight variety of freeze. There's anxiety in panic. Rage is more anger, fight. Panic is more anxiety, flight. But also with the immobilization. I think that someone could be triggered into a freeze, but it could also be where the freeze energy is attempting to discharge, but the person can't handle it. They can't tolerate the amount of flight fight in their system, but they also can't work through the immobilization of the flight fight. And you kind of have to work through the immobilization aspect of it first and then work on the flight fight, I think. That's typically how I kind of go about things. This panic or rage or overwhelm, this is more the uncontrollable, unproductive crying. This is out of control. It's explosive. Potentially it's mindless and not mindful. And it's not supposed to be a dig or an insult. It's just that it's not mindful. The person is not able to be in their safety state and witness and experience the stuck state. And it's a lot. That's fine. I don't expect them to, but it's a lot. This could eventually lead to what the letter writer had indicated about self-harm. I think self-harm can have a bunch of different things that bring somebody to it, including intense self-hatred, but I would say that's more of a freeze. It might be a relief from whatever they're going through. It might be a distraction. It might be a physical distraction, depending on what it, all this stuff depends on what it is and whatnot. But basically, there could be a bunch of different paths that lead somebody could get out of self-harm, I guess. A bunch of different temporary pseudo benefits. Self-harm is a behavioral adaptation. It feels a bit better in that moment. It feels less crummy, but it obviously is not effective and could end up making things worse. But I noticed that with self-harm that there definitely tends to be a freeze aspect of it that can feel more like panic or rage. I think self-hatred could be a form of rage as well. It could be an overwhelm. It could be so much inner turmoil that the physical aspect of the self-harm might be a relief. But I think a lot of that stems from freeze, dysregulated freeze. I think a lot of that stems from a dysregulated freeze. And actually, as I break this stuff down with my clients and we look at the self-harm thoughts and we do a chain analysis of how we got to that point, a lot of times it's this freeze stuff attempting to come out to discharge and they cannot handle it, and that's okay. For now. But it seems like a lot, like over and over again. And I can't tell you, dear listener, fellow stuck now, I can't tell you what your freeze state is like or what your self-harm is there for. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying for my clients that I work with in therapy that repeatedly, this seems to be a pattern, is that the freeze state is attempting to discharge or has been triggered, and the self-harm seems to play a role in alleviating that temporarily. Now, to get some actual relief from this, from all of this, you know by now, if you've heard this before, you know that I'm going to implore you to develop the strength of your vagal brake, your safety state. I'm going to beg you to work on the strength of your safety state. Not easy, I know, but instead of delving into the trauma narrative, instead of attempting to feel all of your feelings, instead of attempting to meditate on the pain that you're in for an hour or two or three or whatever it is, well, why don't we use that time to do something that helps you ground in safety? That is the priority. Grounding in safety is the absolute priority when it comes to all of this trauma relief stuff. Once you're grounded in safety, then you can start to work on the defensive state, the freeze stuff, the flight fight stuff. Once you're grounded in safety, then you can have a more productive cry or two or three or four and get some actual relief and do some discharging. If you could do a mindful cry, or 2 or 3 or 4. This is a lot, and I don't expect you to take this and run with it today. I'm hoping this brings some clarity clarity. I hope this helps clear up some of the stuff for you, dear listener, fellow stuck knot. But hey, if you want to build on this and you want to learn more about this polyvagal stuff, I have a free 3-day email challenge for you. It's called the 3-day polyvagal stage challenge. If you sign up for my email list, I'll put a link in the description. If you sign up for my email list, I will send you an email once a day for 3 days that teaches you how to identify all of these polyvagal states and then challenges you to identify each of these states, like 1 or 2 per day for 3 days. And then that's it. And then you succeed. So it teaches you about it, and then it guides you on how to identify it, including the freeze state. Yes. Including shutdown, including freeze, including flight and fight. And yeah, of course, play and stillness and safety. But yeah, including freeze, I actually teach you how to identify the freeze state in a safe way, in a non-triggering way during this 3-day challenge. So head on over to justinlmft.com/3-day polyvagal. That's /3-day polyvagal. And again, the link is in the description. So click that and you'll be all set to sign up for my email list. This podcast is not therapy, not intended to be therapy or be a replacement for therapy. Nothing in this creates or indicates a therapeutic relationship. Please consult with your therapist or seek for one in your area if you are experiencing mental health symptoms. Nothing in this podcast should be construed to be specific life advice. It's for educational and entertainment purposes only. More resources are available in the description of this episode and in the footer of justinlmft.com.